Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is L3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful Beehive State, which is called Utah, right along north of Salt Lake City to be exact. And today's date, Tuesday, August 25th, 2015. Yeah, it's been busy, so I know I should be a little bit more active. However, I have other things that are happening, so please bear with me. But thereafter, thanks for checking in. Yes, and I know yesterday they had a 23rd anniversary of Hurricane Andrew that devastated mostly South Dade County. And for me, on first hand, I'll be very sincere. I went through that. I was mainly in the, I'll say, central West Kendall area. And fortunately, we had minor damage, a lot of landscape. Oh, excuse me. Ooh. Sorry about that. Didn't expect it. And I have to say, a lot of lessons were learned. And I did have taken the initiative of volunteering my time, helping some of my colleagues out in Cutler Ridge, which is now Cutler Bay. Couldn't really complain because, like I said, it's just minor damage where I lived during that time. But many people I know who survived still live down there, which is great. And always respect Mother Nature. And I think this is why I intend not to get excited over petty things. Just a lot of us grew up during that time and learned to respect, appreciate life a lot more. They claim that 10 people died, but there's others are saying more than that because it was so powerful, especially around Cutler Ridge, Perrine, Country Walk, Florida City. It was very powerful. They were the worst areas hit. And I remember the time when I was driving with some friends of mine, the Florida Turnpike extension was so crowded. We took this one street, Southwest 117th Avenue, and we were just amazed when one section of the street was minor damage, and the other side all you saw were four walls because it was a very dry hurricane. They said many spurts and tornadoes touched down, funnel clouds just bounced on the ground and went up again because it only had 2 inches of rain. They said they never had anything that powerful in the past 50 years, and they say that it was like 50 years, mainly the Labor Day Hurricane 1935, which didn't have any names until 1950, which destroyed the whole the Gold Coast Railroad. And there's a remnants of it when you go on the 7 Mile Bridge and you head face the east. There's just the pillars themselves are still up, the columns. So it'll give people a little good history lesson. So, like I said, I still live down there. I'll be back there again soon. That's just part of life. There's no such thing as a utopic area or society or city or town, country, doesn't matter. Everywhere you go has its flaws. So, hopefully even in South Florida, I know there's supposed to be Erica's coming up and possibly, was it Danny? Just buckle down, prepare yourselves, and have all your tools ready, including firearms when it's necessary, because the fact you have looters. Looters are like criminals, they don't care. They have to beat people when they're down. You know what to do. Natural law. So I just gotta give me my little brief view on my experience with Hurricane Andrew. And like I said, my friends, just minor damage where I lived. Pretty damn fortunate. You, my family. And one thing I noticed, one more before I proceed here. I recall when WIOD's transmission went out. It's just static. That was along Bal Harbor area, if you're familiar with Dade County or Miami Beach area. So I had a tune in, I think it was Waxy 790. So during that time, they were getting phone calls, and that's when I noticed people in Naranja, Perrine, Cutler Ridge, they were like, We're in our bathrooms. The doors are we board up the doors. Then I heard about the eye was in the. It was the eye was there. It was all calm. The eye went over. So I told my family members the worst fits south of us. And my mom, everyone was in tears. But like I said, it was sad. People complain about how bad they got hit when they went down there. They're like, wow. But I have to say one thing for sure, too. A lot of people did stuck together, volunteered their time. People brought in food in those devastated areas, and I always give them my homage. We may bust chops a little bit, but we stood on, because we care. Regardless of what you think. People complain about where they live, but you know what? Human nature always prevails. You're going to have a bunch of whiners and retortions, but when the rally like this hits, we need to stick together. And always remember that. Don't let all the petty things, material life, or someone farted, just being sarcastic. All little things. Just flush it down the toilet. It's like feces. It sits there, you flush it. Forget about it. Keep moving on. And that's all I have to make my statements on that horrific day. So, hope for the best, my friends, and prepare for the worst. Well, I got some things I want to talk about. Just browsing through Twitter, and a good amount caught my eye. And this came from the Liberty Blitzkrieg. This was done by Michael Krieger, came out today. Wow, but I'll say about a few hours ago. This was entitled, Anti-American Sentiment Runs High in Russia After Retired U.S. General Suggested Start Killing Russians. And this reads here, this is quote, "The only way the United States could have any effect in this region and turn the tide," Mr. Scales said, "is to start killing the Russians. Killing so many Russians that even Putin's media can't hide the fact that Russians are returning to the motherland in body bags. But given the small amount of support we're giving to the Ukrainians, given the ability to the Ukrainians themselves to conquer attack against these, 12,000 Russians camped in their country. Sadly, that's not likely to happen." That was from retired U.S. Major General Robert H. Scales. And I'm going to proceed here. Earlier this year, I outlined my take on modern American foreign policy in the Post, The Forgotten War, Understanding the Incredible Debacle Left Behind by NATO in Libya. This is my conclusion. There are only two logical conclusions that can be reached about American foreign policy leadership in the 21st century. One, the American leadership is ruthlessly pursuing immoral wars all over the world with the intent of creating outside enemies to focus public anger on as a conscious diversion away from the criminality happening domestically. As an added bonus, the intelligence military-industrial complex makes an incredible sum of money. I've got to move my chair up a little bit. The end result, serfs are distracted with inane nationalistic fervor while the elites earn billions. Two, the American leadership is completely and totally inept, being easily manipulated into overseas conflicts by ruthless corporate interests and cunning foreign rebels in order to advance their own selfish interests, which are in conflict with the interests of the general public. I can't come up with any other logical conclusion. Either way, such people have no business running the affairs of these United States, and their actions are merely increasingly instability and violence across the planet. The longer they remain in charge with no accountability, the more dangerous this world will become. Just a month later, retired U.S. General Robert H. Scales was interviewed on Fox Business with Lou Dobbs. And he suggested killing so many Russians that Putin would lose his power base back home. I really wish I was making it up, but watch it here for yourself. And there is a video link for that. It's like over a minute long. And I gotta say about General Scales, retired General Scales, is nothing more than a demoniac piece of trash that sold his soul to Zbigniew Brzezinski. I'm just wondering if he's branded on his rear end called property of Zbigniew Brzezinski. Real men worship the empire. That's what I gotta say about Robert Scales. Throw his behind on the front line in the line of fire. See how tough he really is. Unacceptable man that bastard is. And I'm sorry, I just hate bashing, but based on their actions, I find it's totally unacceptable and condemning. And I will continue on. The good news is that the man is retired. Crazy thing that such a man, so obviously demented, dangerous, and unstable, rose to such a position in the U.S. military in the first place. I'd also like to know who's paying his bills these days. Perhaps then we can understand why he's trying so hard to start World War III. The New York Observer referenced this video earlier today when discussing how anti-Americanism is now on the rise in Russia. We learned that since the beginning of the year, Putin's propaganda industry, feeling the economic crisis, has to tighten its belt. The Russian Information Agency TASS announced a 25% staff reduction and 20% salary cut for its employees. Rossiyskaya Gazeta, which holds a monopoly of the official publications of new laws and government decrees, fired 10% of its staff. Similar examples are innumerable, as Bloomberg reported in January. Despite all the economizing, the level of anti-Americanism in Russia has reached its all-time high, fluctuating from 70% to 73% of negative and strongly negative feelings toward the U.S. this year, according to the respected polling institution Levada Center. The possible explanation: somebody else is doing all the heavy lifting of the Kremlin propaganda machine, helping to save millions and outsourcing the humongous task of proving to the Russians that the West started the final doom from the start crusade against Mother Russia. One of its big helpers has been Fox News Channel and a handful of its analysts. Yes, you can watch Fox News in Russia as well as CNN, Euronews, and an unlimited number of TV channels the world knows. This year, Fox News analyst, retired Major General Robert H. Scales, saved a lot of money for the Kremlin propaganda machine, and now he's saving even more. Back in March, Major General Scales infuriated with the Russian public with his solution to how to help Ukraine regain control of the territories that have fallen into the arms of pro-Russia insurgents. The only way the United States can have any effect in this region and turn the tide, Mr. Scales says, is to start killing Russians. Killing so many Russians that even Putin's media can't hide the fact that Russians are returning to the motherland in body bags. But given the small amount of support we've given to the Ukrainians, given the ability of the Ukrainians themselves to counterattack against these 12,000 Russians camped in their country, sadly is not going to likely to happen. Since the beginning of the year, Putin's propaganda industry, feeling the economic crisis, has tightened its belt. The Russian Information Agency TASS announced. Looks like I'm repeating myself, and I do apologize. Wow, looks like it's the same thing here. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah, I am repeating myself here. I'm just trying to look. Yeah, okay, it's the same article. Okay, Bloomberg too. Okay, it's all the same thing. But I will just continue on, so bear with me here. The possible explanation: somebody else is doing the heavy lifting of the Kremlin propaganda machine, helping to save millions and outsource the humongous task of proving to the Russians that the West started the final doom from the start crusade against Mother Russia. Of his big helpers, Fox News. Okay, I made all that statement. According to Mr. Scales, the attack on him by the Russians was the first attack of the First Amendment in the U.S., an attempt to intimidate for the free press. Despite the bravado, he abruptly canceled plans to cruise the Baltics, being careful about the long arm of Russian Famida. While retired U.S. Army General story was unfolding in Russia, the U.S. State Department announced that the renewal of its crusade against what is called Russian propaganda, heralding the increase in spending on the program, including a $500,000 grant to train journalists to fight Moscow lies in the Baltic states alone. If the point is to counter Russian rhetoric, the State Department might do better to spend its $500,000 keeping General Scales away from the microphone and keyboards. Absolutely. And I'll continue on here. It is not just a one-sided thing either. Earlier this year, the Washington Times noted feeling is mutual. A Gallup poll this year found negative American sentiment toward Russia and post-Cold War was 70% unfavorable and 24% favorable. So who's trying to start World War III and why? Let's not forget this gem. Yes. And there's plenty of links on here you can look at. It's in Liberty. Michael Krieger. Well. So if you look at this, it's to defend Ukraine. And if you hear my past episodes, it's Big Bill Brzezinski's vision of conquering all of Eurasia, and Ukraine is right in the middle of it. Something to look at, folks. And if all you neocons telling me I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, read the damn book. Then we'll discuss it. If not, shut your trap. This is nothing more than a one world order platform. They want this divide and rule so they can have a bigger police state, a greater world government, and all the good stuff that they want to put on our laps by making everything from our natural born rights to privileges. This is a divide and rule game, my friends. I have nothing against the Russian people. There are a lot of great individuals out there. Vladimir Putin, yes, he has his rough edges. I'm not going to praise or worship the man myself. But he has stopped playing ball. One world, one child policy got disbanded. He arrested many people from the central bankers that trying to manipulate the ruble. Got them arrested. This is one of the reasons why they want to go after him. He's not playing their game, and I am not, once again, praising Putin. You have to look at everything in a bigger picture. And to this guy, retired Major General Scales, throw his goofy bobblehead posterior into the front line. Let's see how tough he really is. Like I said, I know he sold his soul to the one world order. He's just like the rest of them, bend over bobs and proud. If you know him, I have my condolences. If you care, start calling vultures like him out. Never be afraid, my friends. This is what the information war is all about. None of us want to see World War III. Many of us, even in the United States and the world, condemns empires. Like I said before, read the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers. They were against, many of the writers condemn an empire. It's nothing more than a lie. They use in the United States as a pawn for their bigger game. And Zbigniew Brzezinski is nothing more than a treasonous, tyrannical vulture. Just read his work, including the Grand Chessboard, and you understand why. Not hate the man personally, but condemn his actions with a passion. Send this out to everyone you know, because none of us want to see this occurring to affect everybody, including your families, your friends, and even your enemies, which are most of us are petty ones. Petty attributes, qualities, small stuff. This is a lot worse. I don't even want to see my enemies' kids or their loved ones get involved in this battle as well. So that's why I say, support a republic, my fellow Americans, condemn an empire. And go after the neocons, neolibs, and neoquacks, regardless if they're Democrat, Republican, start calling these people out. And there's pathetic sympathizers or disciples. That's all I have to say on that area. And these people know I'm absolutely right. Michael Krieger, thank you for putting this out, my friend. All right, next one here. Came from the libertarianrepublic.com. And it came out today. It's entitled Rebel Economists, Activists Gathering a Secretive Retreat to Trash Wall Street Manipulators. And it came out by Austin Peterson. And it says here, Libertarian Bilderberg's gathering to blast central planners. This is in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. A conference of rebel economists are gathering to set a Jackson Hole, Wyoming this weekend to poke holes in the mainstream consensus of American monetary policy while the U.S. stock market is currently undergoing a roller coaster ride of downs and ups. A symposium of scholars and speakers at the Jackson Hole Summit plan on taking aims at the world's central banking establishment, who will not coincidentally be gathering at their own annual conference nearby. The Jackson Hole Summit hosted by American Principles in Action with the shadowing the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City's events on the topics of inflation dynamics and monetary policy. The Kansas City Fed annually summons academic experts, financial market participants, and central bankers to the mountain retreat. This year, affairs is receiving an unusual amount of scrutiny due to current market volatility. A coalition of fed-up activists who present to protest racial inequality and the simultaneous presence of the Jackson Hole Summit. If this all sounds boring to you, you go back to sleep. The adults will decide what to do with your money. But the libertarian scholars of the Jackson Hole Summit aren't type of people who want to tell you what to do with your cash. The brokers of intellectual and politicals invite to speak will be offering free market crash course seminars and speeches that will take aim at the current Federal Reserve policy of easy money, bailouts, and currency devaluation. These are the scholars and heavy-hitting proponents of the modern libertarian movement, whose core philosophy of monetary policy can be summed up in just one word: freedom. There's a quote here saying, "The interesting fact is what I've called the monopoly of government of issuing money has only been deprived of us good money, has been also deprived us of the only process in which we can find out what would be good money. We do not even quite know what exact qualities we want, because in the 2,000 years which we've used coins and other money, we've never been allowed to experiment with it. We have never been given a chance to find out what the best kind of money would be." It is by F.A. Hayek, A Free Market Monetary System. It says here, luminaries such as Wall Street Journal's Stephen Moore will be side to side with popular YouTube celebritarians, I like that, such as Julie Brodsky, president of the Heritage Foundation. Jim DeMint will present, as well as one of the world's leading experts in free banking, George Mason professor Larry White. Professor White is an expert of the Austrian School of Economics, radical theory that people should be free to choose their own currency. To put it bluntly, ending the Federal Reserve System entirely. Ron Paul would approve. Co-director of the Sound Policy Project, Judy Shelton, writes that the event is being held because it is time to recognize the consequences of trying to steer economies by cheaping the cost of credit for government, big business, and wealthy investors, instead of stimulating economic growth. Central banking activism is distorting marketplace signals and misallocating investment capital. The event will be a biting of the thumb at the current Wall Street establishment, who must be feeling the heat as trillions of dollars in value are disappearing from global markets. These libertarian Bilderbergers who are in the elite sentinels in advancing of free market sound money principles will be the ones to watch. It's the Fed's meeting that's going to be boring. The Jackson Hole Summit promises to be anything but. The event will occur August 27th through the 29th. The Libertarian Republic will be reporting on the ground at the summit this weekend. Stay tuned for more journalism, interviews, and podcasts about the summit. There you go. So it's just an announcement when you think about it. And I think it's great. Because what's been happening, everyone's talking about the whole, economic collapse and so forth. And what these rebels, mavericks, are doing is finding other avenues to keep things going without relying on big government, tyrannical bankers, and all those other vultures that don't give a damn about you and I. So you know what? I am pleased to see this happening, and always find out in your own areas that when is this occurring. Because I know in Greece, the people are doing their own things of exchanging, which is pretty cool. I don't know the name off the top of my head, but it can be done. Because during the time of the Great Depression, about all the counties within the Union, the United States, were finding ways of doing exchanges and helping each other out. Basic community efforts. And if this does occur, Lord willing, always in Jerusalem and many others, and I have to agree, shop local, buy local, support your local economy. That would be your best bet. Don't rely on the big corporations. Which we all, don't get me wrong, we all have our habits, okay, even myself. But you gotta practice little by little if you haven't done it. And don't get me wrong, we've all been swindled, my friends, one way or the other. But this is good to know. Definitely, if you're going out there in Jackson for Jackson Hole Summit, that'd be great. Unfortunately, I probably won't make it, which is a shame. I should have known about this in advance. However, if there's anything else, I'll keep you guys posted and send you information as well to me. That'd be great. You know how to reach me, and I'll tell right after the show. So you know what? Thumbs up for these economists, man. And the whole thing is, doesn't matter if it's violent or non-violent. A little rebellion now and then is good. That's what Thomas Jefferson says, okay? All right, next one here came from The Hill. Came out today, and this is by this is interesting, and this one's entitled U.S. passport scoffed at by Israel, U.S. stands by James Zogby. And I will, there you go. And it's right here. Last year, some members of Congress attempted to pass legislation that would admit Israel into the U.S. visa waiver program. The State Department pushed back, noting that because of Israel's long history of discrimination against Americans of Arab descent, they do not meet the program's key requirements of reciprocity. Reciprocity. Okay, I hope I pronounced that right. Congress relented and instead passed a sense of Congress that stipulated that should Israel meet this requirement, they could be included in the visa waiver program. In a sense, they were put on probation. Interesting. In the past year, Israel has continued to demonstrate that it has no intention of ending their practice of discriminating against persons of Arab descent. My office has received new reports of shameful treatment meted out of Arab Americans on their arrival in Israel. In 2 cases in particular deserve to be noted. After landing at Ben Gurion International Airport, George Kahori, 70, and Habib Jadeh, 62, were detained for long hours, subjected to abusive interrogations, assaulted by Israeli security personnel, and finally denied entry and forced to purchase at their own expenses return tickets to the United States. How sweet of them. George is a professor and a deacon of his church from San Francisco. Habib is a pharmacist and a respected community leader from Brooklyn. Both are American citizens of Palestinian descent. George was traveling to the Holy Land on a pilgrimage. Habib was on his way to attend a family wedding in the West Bank. Neither had been back to Israel-Palestine in more than 20 years, and neither was able to complete their journey. While no Americans should be subjected to such treatment, both disturbing element of these cases is the reason they were denied entry and deported. Because both men were of Palestinian descent, Israel would not honor their U.S. passports or recognize the men as American citizens. Both were told they had to acquire Palestinian IDs and then, as Palestinians, enter the West Bank through Jordan. Wow, that was talk about love, huh? All right. George's case is especially instructive when the Israeli border control agent told him that he could not enter Israel. George attempted to engage the agent, saying, "I'm coming as an American citizen." To which the agent replied, No, you belong with the Palestinian people. This is our Israel. This is for the Jews. No Palestinian should come to Israel. You should have gone through the Allenby Bridge. When George explained that I'm coming with an American passport and you should honor it, the agent replied, "How do you want me to honor your American passport? Do you want me to kiss it, to hug it, or to worship it?" What happened to Habib and George were not the actions of a few rogue agents. For more than 3 decades, the Arab American Institute has submitted to the State Department hundreds of instances where Arab Americans have been subjected to such treatments at Israel's border. By so flagrantly disregarding the citizenship rights of Americans of Arab descent, Israel is in violation of its treaty obligation found in 1951, the U.S.-Israel Treaty of Friendship, Commerce, and Navigation. In the language of the treaty, Israel pledges to permit U.S. citizens the right to travel freely, to reside at places of their choice, to enjoy liberty of conscience, and to guarantee them the most constant protection and security. Not only has Israel consistently violated its treaty obligation, but our government has failed to live up to its commitment to protect the rights of its own citizens. The opening page of the U.S. passport states that the Secretary of State of the United States hereby requests all of who may concern to permit the citizen national of the United States name to hereby pass without delay of hindrance, and in the case of need, give all lawful aid and protection. And they're correct, because I do have a passport myself, so I can attest to that. The Department of State says that it does not condone Israel's treatment of Arab Americans. In reality, despite denying Israel's admission into the visa waiver program, the State Department appears to acquiesce to Israel's behavior. When George Corey's daughter wrote a letter of a complaint to the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv, she received a response saying, "Unfortunately, the U.S. government cannot assist U.S. citizens in gaining entry into Israel. Should your father wish to travel again in the future, we advise him to contact the nearest Israeli embassy or consulate for guidance." What? The U.S. officials that directed her to the State Department of State travel advisory, which states that regardless of whether they hold U.S. citizenship, Israeli authorities consider anyone who has parents or grandparents who were born or lived in the West Bank or Gaza has to be claimed to a PAID, which is a Palestinian ID. They will therefore be treated as Palestinians and not as Americans. It's upsetting that both the Department of State travel advisory and the consul's letter acknowledgeable Israel's disregard for our citizenship's rights and claim to be powerless to hold them accountable for their actions. The acquiescence allows Israel to act with impunity. It also makes our government appear to be complicit in Israel's behavior. More must be done. Israel cannot be allowed to disregard the citizenship rights of Americans or to unilaterally define persons of Arab descent as second-class American citizens. The Department of State and our elected representatives should demand that the Israeli government fully live up to its treaty obligations to treat all Americans equally without regard to their religion or national origin. This is not merely a matter of denying Israel's waiver privileges. It is a question of whether our government will guarantee Arab Americans the equal protection which they are entitled and which they deserve. This is Zogby, the president of the Arab American Institute. And based on this, he is absolutely correct. Because the truth of the matter is, like I said, it's American citizen. They shouldn't get another ID. That's sufficient. And there's a treaty for that. Okay, from 1951. Oh, it doesn't count anymore? What? Is the Israeli government and their agents special? We should just kiss the floor they walk on? Hell no. And here's a question. Why? How come Israel, okay, in Hebrew means struggling with God? All right, and I know one thing for sure. I know if it was an Israeli come over here and we deny them, they'll say we're anti-Semitic. So you know what? I just hate this double-standing platform from tyrannical governments in general. Okay? This is totally unacceptable, null and void. And I don't give a damn if AIPAC, and I don't care about AIPAC or the AIPAC and all these pro-Israeli lobbyists trying to tell us who to support. You're not my nanny. All right? You gotta, until you clean your own rears, your own behinds, you treat people, you sign this treaty, you treat the people with dignity and respect. Because you know why? Because right now, with this, boycotting Israel is happening in the United States. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger if you keep on screwing around. There's some good people out there. And here's another thing, too. Not all Palestinians are Arabs, Arab descent supposedly, yeah. But are they all Muslims? No. And many of them are Christians and Jews as well, so they don't count, right? Because they're dark hair, dark eyes. Oh my goodness, let's run to the hills. That's why I'm very critical with the Israeli government, and I'm just tired of telling people Israel this, Israel that. And like I said, there's great people out there who are Israeli are suffering from the consequences of tyranny, from their own, from this particular entity. Because what's going to be next? It could be any of us. We can't let this happen, and you know what? We got to stand by these folks on a matter of principle, because if you don't, your group can be next. They say, oh, well, you're a Palestinian because you're dark hair, dark eyes. Hey, you could be an Italian and or Latin American or Hispanic with dark hair, dark eyes. They'll assume you're an Arab. Come on. Okay, this is a total sham, unacceptable, null and void. And you know what? I'll let everyone know. We should not revolve the world around them based on these actions. You gotta treat it like it is. Unacceptable across the board, and I don't care how much money we use for foreign aid to this country. And you know me well enough. I support no foreign aid to everyone, friend or foe. If people want to donate money to them voluntarily, that's your prerogative. But why should we have to be conscripted on paying for everyone else? But see, that's all I got to say about it. This is, I condemn it, and no ends, ifs, or buts. All right. I'm going to do a couple of Big Brother related stuff here. This one came from The Guardian. And it's entitled, Digital Surveillance Worse Than Orwell, Says New UN Privacy Chief. John Kanatsy described British oversight as a joke and says the Geneva Convention for the Internet is needed. And he says here, the UN privacy chief has said the world needs a Geneva Conference-style law for the Internet to safeguard data and combat the threat of massive clandestine digital surveillance. Speaking to The Guardian weeks after his appointment as a UN Special Rapporteur on Privacy, Joseph Kanatsy described British surveillance oversight as being a joke and said the situation is worse than anything George Orwell could have foreseen. He added he doesn't use Facebook or Twitter and said it was regrettable that vast people sign away their digital rights without thinking about it. Some people were complaining because they couldn't find me on Facebook, they couldn't find me on Twitter, but since I believe in privacy, I never felt the need for it. Which is true. It's a want, not a need. Same like myself, I just look at Facebook and Twitter as a want, not a need. I'm not going to put my personal love life on there whatsoever. Okay, so use it thoroughly. It's okay to use their tools to put out information. Use it as information war tools, all right? All right, I will continue on here. But since I believe in privacy, I never felt the need of it. Kanatsy, a professor of the technology law at University of Groningen in the Netherlands and the head of the Department of Information Policy and Governance at the University of Malta, said, appointed after concerns about surveillance and privacy following the Edward Snowden revelations. Kanatassi agreed that this notion of universal law on surveillance could embarrass those who may not sign up to it. Some people may not want to buy into it. He acknowledged, but if one takes the attitude that some countries will not play ball, then, for example, the chemical weapons agreement would never have come about. Kanatassi came to his new post in July after a controversial spat involving the first-choice candidate Katrin Naiman-Malkav, who, and the Germans in particular, those who might not be tough enough on the Americans. But for Kanatassi, well known of having his mind of his own, it's not America but Britain that he singles out as having the weakest oversight in the Western world. That's precisely one of the problems we have to tackle. That if your oversight mechanism is a joke, and a rather bad joke as its citizens' expense, for how long can you laugh it off as a joke? He said proper oversight is the only way of progressing, and hopes more people will think about and vote for privacy in the UK. And that's where the political process comes in, he said, because you can laugh off the economy and the National Health Service. Not in the UK election if you want to survive. The appointment of a UN special rapporteur on privacy is seen as hugely important because it elevates the right of privacy in the digital age to that of other human rights. As the first person in the job, the investigator will be able to set the standard for the digital right to privacy, deciding how far to push governments that want to conduct surveillance for security reasons and corporations who mines us for our personal data. Kanatassi's mandate is extensive. He's empowered to systematically review government policies and laws on interception of digital communications and collection of personal data. Identify actions that intrude on privacy without compelling justification. Assist governments in developing best practices to bring global surveillance under rule of law. Further articulate private sector responsibilities to respect human rights. Help ensure national procedures and laws are consistent with the international human rights obligations. Although Kanatassi admits his job is a complex one that is not going to be solved with a magic bullet, he says he is far from starting from scratch and believes there are at least four main areas, including a universal law or on surveillance, tackling the models of the big tech corporations, defining privacy, and raising awareness among the public. I would say it's impossible to achieve in 3 years, and it's probably impossible to achieve if the mandate is renewed to 6 years. If you're trying to do too much, but I do think that, at least my view of things, and it feels like human rights is a long-term view, right? The impact must be felt in the long term. However, Kanatassi says we are dealing with the world even worse than any Orwell could have foreseen. It is worse, he said, because if you look at the CCTV alone, at least Winston Smith in Orwell's novel 1984 was able to go out in the countryside and go under a tree and expect there wouldn't be any screen, and it was called. Whereas today there are many parts of the English countryside where there are more cameras than George Orwell could ever have imagined. So the situation in some cases is far worse already. That the way we handle it is going to be the difference. But Orwell foresaw a technology that was controlling. In our case, we are looking at the technology that is ever-developing possibility of more sinister capabilities. Because of this, Snowden revelations were very important, he said. They were very important. Snowden will continue to be looked at upon as a traitor by some and heroes by others. But in actual fact, his revelations confirmed to many of us who have been working in the field for a long time what has been going on and the extent to which it has gone out of control. Kanatassi, who works between his offices in Malta and the Netherlands, has set his sights on challenging the business model of companies that are very often taking the data that you never even knew they were taking. This is one thing that's certainly going to come up in my mandate. which is the business model that large corporations are using. He said, we have a number of corporations that have set up a business model that is bringing, in general, thousands of millions of euros and dollars every year, and they didn't ask anybody's permission. They didn't go out and say, oh, we like to have a licensing law. No, they just went out and create a model where people's data has become the new currency, and unfortunately the vast bulk of people sign their rights away without knowing or thinking about it too much, he said. And that's why I always tell folks, even myself, you gotta really look at everything thoroughly the best you can. And I know many people, like, they use Facebook and Twitter, and the biggest mistake I see is people want to throw their personal lives right on there, ranting about their relationships and telling people, slandering people, talking about their job problems on these social media groups. That is totally irrelevant and choosing poorly. That would be the right statement to say. And of course, you got all these cameras around, like I heard England. Even my kid brother went there. It's like Big Brother Haven. And one thing I gotta tell people too about these surveillance cameras and so forth: every gadget has a flaw. We should focus on that. There's so many ways of countering these things and drive this tyrannical Orwellian system insane. Yes, I do support privacy issues. I am not going to argue about that whatsoever. And I know some of these search engines have these filters, has its pros and cons as well. We have to look at everything thoroughly before getting involved. That includes myself. I openly admit that. Thereafter, however, when it comes to using these social media groups, I have my platform, and you should too. And the whole goal is not to put all your personal lives on these avenues, because it can bite you in the rear when you least expect it. You know, don't even talk about your job problems on these areas. You know, keep everything low key. Use it for other means. You know, like a blog, your views on certain areas, information to get people thinking. I like to use these media groups as an educational platform, enlighten and share input one another. And that's to me, that's a lot more productive. And you could drive your Orwellian nightmare more insane. And here's one thing for sure: how rate technology is going, they may be watching us, but we can be examining them. That's what scares them more. To always use these areas wisely at the greatest of your capabilities. And there's plenty of people out there can give you a hand on it. Rest assured, that's how you use it. Think of these social media groups as a want rather than a need. Okay? Use it responsibly. All right, here's another one here. Came from the FindLaw.com. It was an actual case about the Posner's Internet Research Alters case. Did he cross the line? This was by Casey C. Sullivan, Esquire. And it came out earlier this morning. That's good enough. And as it reads here, another 7th Circuit judge is in hot water these days. And no, it's not for forgetting the case for a few years this time. Judge Posner, perhaps one of the highest profile judges in the federal courts, minus only to the Supreme Court of the United States, came under fire after he did his own internet research on the case and citing Wikipedia in the process. The case involved a prisoner suing, per se, after prison officials took away his medication. His suit was originally tossed out, only to be revived in part because Judge Posner did his own research to show that a genuine factual dispute existed, relying on information that wasn't submitted by the parties or present during the trial. As Judge David Hellman noted in his dissent, that goes beyond permissible boundaries on the appellate court. Evidence is evidence, right? The case is fairly straightforward until it wasn't. Jeffrey Allen Rowe, a prisoner in Indiana, was diagnosed with reflux esophagus, or gastroesophageal reflux disease, also known as heartburn. GERD allows stomach acid to back up into the esophagus, returning an inflammation and tissue damage. Rowe needed Zantac to control GERD, but prison officials took it away and allowed him to use the drug at mealtime, unless he wanted to buy his own pills from the commissary. Rowe filed a Section 1983 suit, but was denied counsel and a medical expert. Of course, per se, plaintiffs aren't always effective courtroom advocates. Just look at the lawyerist roundup of handwritten pleadings. If you want a reminder, thankfully Rowe had Judge Posner on his side. Posner searched the web for information on GERD and Zantac. Information neither Rowe nor the prison had provided. That information made it into his opinion. Posner cited Wikipedia, WebMD, the National Institute of Health, and other online sources throughout his opinion. It is not just for background either. Posner relies that the internet info to determine that refusing Rowe access to Zantac between meals would leave him suffering. A neutral decision maker. Did Posner's research cross the line? Judge Hamilton seemed to think so, saying that Posner's research turns the court from a neutral decision maker into an advocate from one side. It is not the first time Posner has gone outside the record either. As Josh Blackman notes on his blog, Posner is often a flagrant offender who has even ruled based on experiments he conducts on his own. Take for an example that he made his clerks dress up in protective gear to see how long it would take, despite evidence provided by the parties. Of course, Posner says he's not just doing his job. In case of such a dramatic inequality of resources and capabilities, Posner wrote the adversarial process should not be an unalterable bar to justice. Sounds dangerously European to me. The third judge in the panel, the fuss wasn't even necessary. She noted Judge Alana Rovin ruled for the plaintiff as well, but said nothing more than the record was needed to make that decision. You know, it's very interesting because it just really gets my goat at times. The whole thing is people want to look at facts rather than just rhetoric. And in this particular case, they want to treat the people want to treat some inmate like a piece of garbage, and he has to do this. And we need to look at that. Did that violate his rights under the 8th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, cruel and unusual punishment? Did they know that they have to really give him the medicine so he won't get heartburn and suffer? So the judge did his own research. Well, you know what's interesting is it may be a pro and con game, but the whole thing is people got to get organized, including plaintiffs. And like I said, even with him, with Judge Posner, some people may say he may have crossed the line because he's not a neutral decision. He's supposed to be a neutral decision maker. However, it's always good to do your homework as well. So definitely, it's pretty touchy. You have to have your own view on this. But at least I got to give the Judge Posner some credit because he did take the initiative on doing his own research. Because here's the thing, too. The man has a conscience. All right? The state has been just using people as numbers. It's a numbers game. Then these people have these certain rights. Yeah, they should. They're non-free persons, but they have those certain rights. But don't crucify these folks. Yeah, let them deserve if they have to do the crime. Yeah, they done the crime, do the time. Yeah, but don't use them as lab rats. So, like I said, it has this, it's up to the law firms and the judges themselves. You have to make your own decision on this. Yeah, deposit should be a neutral decision maker, but all the plaintiffs and so forth, what they need to do is take the initiative on doing your own homework and be organized the best you can. That's how I observe these things. And that's how you get the information out to people. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is freedom. Ignorance is enslavement. And I'm going to further on over here. Next one came from Activist Post. Came out 4 days ago, but they just reposted it. They retweeted on Twitter. It's entitled, FDA is killing our freedoms and destroying our health. It's by Aaron Dykes. Oh, interesting. And Aaron Dykes says here, waking up the cynical truth about corruption, back-scratching, revolving door relationships between the FDA and other agencies and the big pharma and big agro-industries has been difficult to face, as the problem is so pervasive as to affect the lives of nearly everyone in this country and beyond throughout the world. As such, I felt the need to respond to John Rappaport's message to libertarians about the FDA, because it is an issue I have also thought about quite often. It is in the interest of a free society who desires limited government and maximum rights to have a tough watchdog who can't protect people. After all, even the average citizen is likely familiar with deadly mistakes and misdeeds of the food and drug industries. People don't want dangerous pharmaceuticals being prescribed to them because proper testing wasn't done. People do not want their food contaminated with salmonella or E. coli. Many people do not want GMOs to be allowed at all, and damn sure want a label on food packages in order to know to which foods contain them. But if these duties of the Food and Drug Administration and then the federal agency has failed over and over again, while protecting those who've done wrong and enabling them to do bigger, better business. The ideas are part of a long and ongoing saga. Put, for starters, the overlapping relationships between the FDA and big pharma industry look something like this. And they have the federal government, a big list. You can see it for yourselves. And you have pharmaceuticals, okay, which they're very similar. And they'll almost go hand in hand, pharmaceutical and federal government. They all have something to conceal. So definitely you can look at this yourself. Just to let you know too, I'm going to post all these articles I'm describing on all my footnotes on my Spreaker page, okay? So I will proceed here. So what can be done about it? What is the solution to the dilemma? As it turns out, protecting individual liberty should be the first priority. Until those rights are respected, the problems can never improve. John Rappaport's writes regularly with great points and a dependable staple of good commentary on this crazy, screwed up world. But here, he cuts right to the chase on an important question, given that the criminals are in charge at the Fox guards the hen house, and that the powers that are fine with foxes eating chickens, and how can we stop it? Regulate it? Protect against it? Ooh, excuse me. In the same society, the big drug companies would have been prosecuted to the sky long ago. Their charters to do business in any state would have been revoked. Their CEOs, executives, and scientists would have been put behind bars for life. Even a limited federal government would have done that. Is here what I'm in accord with libertarians. People have the right and the freedom to refuse medication under any circumstances, even where the experts claim death will be the inevitable outcome. And the people have the right to ingest any compounds they decide might help them. I have to agree. If it If there were a basis for the system, then government couldn't overwhelm the population with rules about mandatory vaccines. See also, there's a link on that, and drugs. The extreme libertarian argument for no government regulations via the FDA isn't going to happen, even if it would be better. Neither can the FDA be reformed to do their job better or at all in protecting people from dangerous drugs and treatments from Big Pharma. Sad but true, utterly and unshakably true. It would be nice if Big Pharma power were checked and problems stopped before they can do harm. It would be so nice if the FDA truly overlooked out for the benefit of people instead of helping the food and drug industry to become more powerful. But just isn't going to happen. Truly regrettable, but sorry, isn't just going to happen. Not only is not realistic, it can be inherently impossible to accomplish. More and more government, including Obamacare and universal health system, and more regulation. Look how well the EPA is doing lately. It's only compounding these problems and making the corruption and loss of freedom worse. And no one is getting healthier in the meantime. In case you have noticed, a national health insurance plan in whatever countries they've been established are the road to perdition, right? Perdition, because they can manipulate to coerce citizens into accepting designated toxic medical treatments. The freedom of refusal is the only protection with crime bosses rule both government agencies like the FDA and pharmaceutical companies. Trying to perform pharma or government is a losing proposition. Maintaining the right to refuse is the most important freedom with respect to medical health. It is a foundation and most important fundamental step. Any free society of the future, no matter how it chooses to embrace technology and facilitate huge areas and masses of people, but as its core respect the basic freedoms of individuals. Any free society of the future must begin with the Bill of Rights and recognize medical freedom as a part of these essential rights. Under a proper interpretation of the spirit of these rights, medical freedom is included, but unfortunately not explicitly cited. Medical freedom means the right to choose that will you put in your body, and the right not to be forced to take drugs or medicine even if other people believe it will save lives. Mandatory vaccines for school children, forced chemotherapy treatments for independent teenagers and Amish children against the will of the child and or parents is absolutely wrong. The heralds the arrival of greater tyranny against all of our health rights. Dr. Benjamin Rush, an influential but lesser-known founding father and medical doctor, saw this clearly as well. Rush, who corresponded with President George Washington and many other founders of the day, wrote letters warning that medical freedom must be protected under the Constitution or else tyranny is basically inevitable. He said, unless we put medical freedom into the Constitution, the time will come when medicine will organize into an undercover dictatorship to restrict the art of healing to one class of men and deny equal privileges to others. The Constitution of the Republic should make a special privilege for medical freedom as well as religious freedom. The settlement is of paramount importance and desperately needs to be revisited. Forcing down medicine is obviously not a sign of a healthy and free society. And the medical right to refuse an individual notification that can deliver a powerful blow to corrupt power by the system. Yes, it is. And Aaron Dykes does TruthStreamMedia.com. I have to say he's absolutely correct. That's why if you read the 9th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, our rights are enumerated, cannot be deprived or disparaged. Okay, that's natural law. We have these rights. And you got these dinkleberries like California, okay, want to do forced inoculation of children to enter school. And Jerry Brown, the dork that he is, and I hate using this rhetoric, but this is really how I feel, wants to believe that he is smart. The California government is smarter than you guys. So I think the Golden State needs to tell them to stick it. And I mean that out of love, because your natural born rights under Article 1 of the state constitution is being infringed, period. No ends, ifs, or buts, but rather self-explanatory. The FDA, as far as I'm concerned, the Food Drug Administration is nothing more than a deceptive bureaucracy. They want to condemn people for having natural remedies, but they pull down their pants for big pharma, just like all those yahoos that are on this list. And you can look at it yourselves. So definitely, finding natural health remedies is the answer. It will preserve your freedom and your children's, and maintain your health rather than perish it. So absolutely, when it comes to your natural born rights, government keep out. That includes the Food and Drug Administration. All right. Something here came out from True Activists, and this is going to be really interesting. It says here, solar power Mayflower will cross the Atlantic 400 years after Pilgrim voyage. It said maneuver by who done this by Amanda Froelich. And it says here, maneuvered by droids and powered by the sun, the Mayflower will become the first surface vessel to complete an unmanned transatlantic voyage. Solar Power Mayflower, a high-tech solar and wind-powered ship, will follow the same routes in its pioneer namesake took from Plymouth to Plymouth exactly 400 years later. But pilgrims won't be maneuvering this ship or passengers of any kind. Instead, a small fleet of drones will steer the ship across the ocean waters in the year 2020. As Popular Science reports, the vessel nicknamed Mars, the Mayflower, which is a Mayflower Autonomous Research Ship, is a joint venture of engineers at 3 UK entities: Plymouth University, Autonomous Craft Specialists, M-Subs, and yacht designers Shuttleworth Design. When the vessel is launched 2020, if no one beats them to it, the Mayflower will become the first surface vessel to complete an unmanned transatlantic voyage. Explained Professor Kevin Jones, the University Executive Dean of the Facility of Science and Engineering. Mars will operate a research platform conducting numerous scientific experiments during the course of its voyage. It will be a test bed for new navigation software and alternative forms of power, incorporating huge advancements in solar, wave, and sail technology. Because Mars is still in the design phase, the photo of the artist's rendering of some early ideas is expected to take 2.5 years to build the craft and another year to test it. At present, there is no word on how long the designers think the actual voyage will take. Unmanned vehicles have crossed the ocean before, in the air and in underwater, but never on the waves. Therefore, this is an exciting development. I think it's going to be pretty cool. It's actually originally from Creative Commons. It'll be pretty neat. We've got to see how this goes in the year 2020. And solar power, hey, that'd be fantastic. But be careful with the unmanned ships. This would be a good testing ground, and hopefully it can be used like solar-powered boats and so forth. Will be incredible. So technology has its double-edged sword. Okay, it can control or enhance humanity. So definitely, I want to see humanity be enhanced rather than being enslaved. So this is going to be pretty interesting, my friend. And we'll just gotta, wait and see and keep tabs on it, all right? Okay, finally, this came from Waging Nonviolence. It's been a while since I've been reading some of their stuff, and I just find it's pretty interesting here. And this is entitled A New Hopeful Chapter in West Papua's 50-year freedom struggle. This is by Jason McLeod. It came out today. As it reads here, Marcus Hollick's eyes are moist. We are inside a portside warehouse in Hanaria, the capital city of the Solomon Islands. Hollick carefully unwraps the first of 5 large 60-pound package encased in hessian. Inside each parcel are 2 large A4 books, part of the massive paper petition. Each book is around 16 inches of thick. They make a dictionary look like a comic book. Haluk was a lead organizer task with collating the hefty tomes and getting them safely outside of West Papua. Josepa Alamang, a 50-year-old stalwart of the West Papuan independence movement, worked alongside him, and she is now in the warehouse. Alamang reaches out and touches the books. Turning to me, she says, "These are the blood and bones of our people." Alamang means what he said during the signature-raising campaign, which took place between March and May of 2015. Indonesian security forces shot 32-year-old Obangma Gaban, or Jaban, a village chief from Yahukimo. In the month of May alone, 487 activists were arrested for participating in the campaign. Some of those were tortured. Officers of Mobile Police Brigade in Manokwari, part of the National Indonesian Paramilitary Police Force, stubbed out cigarettes on Alexander Nakim's body, while the head of the Manokwari Regional Police, Thomas H. Panatori, denied him and his compatriots access to lawyers. Police also demolished communication posts at places like Kanjarawasis University, where people could go sign the petitions. Countless scores were savagely beaten. The petitions are at least nonviolent tactics in a struggle that spans more than 50 years. It is a fight that pits black-skinned, curly-haired Melanesians against their brown-skinned, straight-haired Asian neighbors. Different people, different cultures, and different histories forced together in an inequitable and unstable political arrangement. West Papua is the Pacific's Palestine, greener and bluer, but occupied by Indonesian military since 1963. It is a secret struggle hidden by the Indonesian government, ignored by the international community, sold by the United States and its allies. West Papuans were locked out of their discussion over the transfer of sovereignty from the Dutch. West Papua's former colonial rule to the Indonesian government by the Kennedy administration. Rights of the West Papuans were sidelined. It was Cold War politics with a silver lining for the United States. The deal delivered the world's largest gold mine to Freeport McMoran, a private U.S. company overseen by people like Harry Kissinger, who sat on the board. Oh yeah, I could give you my 2 cents on Harry Kissinger, but you could hear it from my old archives. 7 years later, in 1969, the Indonesian government and the United Nations colluded in violent political fraud. The Act of Free Choice, involving 1,022 West Papuans, intimidated into signing a document stating that they wished to join the Unitary Republic of Indonesia. Back then, the world turned away, but now, in 2015, West Papuans are finding their voice, insisting their Malaysian neighbors in the Pacific recognize them as a nation in waiting, separate from Indonesia. The paper petition in support of the United Liberation Movement for West Papua's campaign to become a member of the Malaysian Spearhead Group, or MSG, an important sub-regional forum of the Pacific Island Forum with the status at the United Nations. MSG leaders were meeting in Hanaria in June 2015. Gaining membership of the MSG is an important first step towards bringing the issue back to the United Nations. The organization that created the problem in the first place. Unsurprisingly, independence for West Papua, or even a discussion of the rights of the West Papuans in an international forum, is vigorously resisted by the Indonesian government. There's a lot at stake: Indonesia's reputation, West Papua's massive resource wealth, and the fate of 1.5 million people. The Indonesian president, Joko Widodo was trying to reassure Malaysian leaders that Indonesia was a new democratic country. Indonesian police were undermining him. As West Papua seized an unarmed insurrection, security forces were desperately trying to violently pacify the population, but because of the Indonesian government ban on foreign media, virtually no news of the petition campaign reached an international audience until the packages were carefully unwrapped in Honaria. Okay. I pronounced that correctly. Hopefully I am. The Indonesian government had tried to stop the petition from leaving the country, seizing copies at the airport as Papuan leaders attempted to take them to the Solomon Islands in their luggage. But Haluk Alamang and the team had made several duplicates, sending them by different routes to Hiniara. This package arrived by international courier. There are 5 copies, one for each Malaysian leader. Haluk's tell me it costs a small fortune. At the time when digital petitions land in our inbox every day, 55,555 signatures may not sound like much, but don't be fooled. There is no collection on easy Facebook likes. Organizers with the United Liberation Movement for West Papua, or ULMWP, traveled the length and breadth of West Papua by ship, plane, car, and on foot to collect signatures from each of the West Papua's 7 regions. The petition not only includes the names, addresses, and signatures of the petitioners, but the people's state-issued identification cards were also copied and included as further proof of authenticity. In addition to radical pro-independence Papuans, many Indonesian migrants also signed. Those who cannot sign their names supplied a fingerprint in addition. West Papuan leaders from all mainland churches signed letters of support. So did the National Council of Customary Chiefs in West Papua, or DAP. Women and student groups. Papuans, intellectuals, armed guerrilla groups, and individual civil servants and politicians working for the Indonesian government. The petitions, letters, and presents of Haniara of nearly 20 West Papuans from inside the country clearly demonstrated that ULMWP has deep broad support inside the country. Papuan citizens may not have a country, but they are the engine that is driving the ULMPW forward. And there are still tens of thousands more petitions that did not make it to Haniara because they could not get them to the ULMWP work team in time to send documents out of the country. The ULMWP international spokesman Benny Wenda sees the petition. He is emotional. In 1969, the Indonesian government deceived the international community with 1,022 people who were forced to say they support Indonesia. He explained, referring to fraudulent act of free choice. Today we have over 55,000 signatures. West Papua's desire for freedom is the Indonesian government's nightmare unraveling. This is why the police and military responded with such ferocity to the petition, a political art that has become a routine and blast in many countries. The rest of Indonesia may be democracy, but West Papua's freedom of expression is prohibited. To security forces, signing a petition is a tantamount to sedition. That sounds particular. It's like when the 54 men signed the Declaration of Independence. They were considered traitors or terrorists. The Herculean task. The ULMWP's decision to focus on the MSG was important for external and internal reasons. Internally, the intermediate objective of securing membership in the SMG immediately became a vehicle for collective action. Through that bounded the newly formed organization together externally. West Papuan leaders knew there would be little international support for their cause unless their Malaysian kin and neighbors stood up for them. But gaining membership of SMG was a Herculean task. Not only did the ULMWP need to demonstrate massive support from the inside the country, they also had organized the efforts across 5 countries. Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, Fiji, Vanuatu and Kanaki, or New Caledonia. Moreover, they only had 6 months to do so. This was not a level playing field on the side of the Indonesian state with deep pockets, hard power at their disposal and the backing of the Papua New Guinean and Fijian government. On the other was ULMWP with limited financial resources but increasingly organized people with support of the Vanuatu government. the Kanak Socialist National Liberation Front, or FLNKS, and the people of Malaysia. What was uncertain at the beginning of the campaign was how the government of the Solomon Islands would respond. There was new sympathy from people within the Solomon Islands government, but political representatives were starting with little knowledge about the reality of the occupation. Moreover, the previous Solomon Islands government had been courted by Indonesian officials, eager to present a raft of economic development opportunities in return for political support. As the campaign progressed, the ULMWP was hindered by repression within West Papua, as well as externally by climatic disruption. The tropical cyclone Pam devastated Vanuatu in March, leaving nearly half the country homeless. It completely destroyed the ULMWP's administrative office and made it more difficult to draw on Vanuatu's assistance to lobby other Malaysian leaders. Around this time, Obangma Gaban was shot dead as he organized a ULMWP fundraiser for humanitarian relief in Vanuatu. There were political challenges. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill from Papua New Guinea has said a lot of nice words. He called West Papuans brothers and kin, but refused to meet with both Wenda and ULMWP General Secretary Octavianus Moat. In late March, O'Neill went as far as deporting Wenda, a somewhat embarrassing move for many Fijians. Former military strongman Prime Minister Volk Frank Bainimarama, pronounced on the front page of the Fiji Sun, his government mouthpiece, that the Indonesian government did not need to worry about their position on the ULMWP's application. Indonesians were with you, crooned Bainimarama. Public records reveal that the Indonesian government invested $20 million to derail the ULMWP's campaign. Fiji benefited handsomely. So did the Papua New Guinea. In months before the MSG Leaders Summit, the Indonesian president and foreign ministers crisscrossed Malaysia in their private jet. What deals were made behind closed doors is not known, but there was no way the Indonesian government wanted the ULMWP in the room. That's why they shot ULMWP activists dead in West Papua. It's why they jailed over 500 activists, even as President Widodo announced he was freeing 5, trying and failing to demonstrate that was all fine in West Papua. As far as Indonesian government was concerned, West Papua is part of Indonesia. End of story. Yeah, sometimes you gotta see things a lot broader in these areas, but this is very, chilling, because this is nothing new at all whatsoever. And that's it's like the whole thing is you want independence, they're doing with nonviolence, and you got people out there that want to just whip them like dogs and say to hell with you. You are considered numbers, not sovereign individuals. And I will continue on here. Wave of solidarity builds. Meanwhile, Mo kept traveling while Wenda and the other 3 members of the ULMWP secretariat kept meeting MSNG officials and leaders. In June 2015, the government of both Samoa and Tonga expressed support for the freedom of West Papua and the ULMWP. West Papua was rapidly becoming a cause celebrate across the Pacific. While diplomacy with governments continued, it was a grassroots support that created the incentive for political leaders to take a clearer position, and still a wave of solidarity was building. In Fiji, a Pacific Conference of Churches had its head office The proliferation of support for the ULMWP required the formation of a Solidarity Council. The Pacific Conference of Churches also helped reignite solidarity in Solomon Islands. In March, they brought church and secular civil society leaders together in Honiara, a local solidarity group. Solomon Islands and the Solidarity for West Papua suddenly went from a group with a half dozen individual members. Sorry about that. Looks like I did a brain scan there, right? A half dozen individual members to an organization of organizations, churches, local non-government organizations who provided essential services, artists, journalists, chiefs, and the Young Women Empowerment Group. One of the members included Christina Sogover, the Prime Minister of Menesius Sogover's daughter, got involved. When the MSG meeting started on June 17th, Honiara's two newspapers, the Solomon Island Star and the Island Sun, enthusiastically followed the story. One each day between June 17th and June 27th, the day after the decision, the front pages of both papers and often the second, third, and fourth messages were devoted to some aspects of the ULMWP's campaign for membership. There were over 140 separate newspaper articles in the space of 120 days. For many in the Solomon Islands, it was not just an issue of solidarity with the Melanesian king. They saw their government's position on the West Papua as a litmus test on a independent foreign policy. Local activists felt that the willingness of the police and local civic authorities allow people to freely march and protest in support of West Papua was a sign of health of local democracy. 10 years after the ethnic tensions threatened to tear the Solomon Islands apart, it was not just the population in the Solomon Islands was growing restless. The leaders of the Melanesian countries began to express concern too. In the article in Vanuatu's Daily Post, Vanuatu's Prime Minister Kilman referred to the comments from ordinary people circulating on Facebook and declared that Port Moresby, Honiara, and Port Vila could easily riot if Melanesian leaders were seen to be backing away from supporting West Papua. You know that? The door is pushed ajar. On June 26th, the decision was made. West Papua, represented by the ULMWP, was granted observer status, and the Indonesian government, represented by 5 governors of the country's easternmost provinces, associate membership. The MSG leaders tried to offer something to both West Papua and Indonesia, disappointing both. They recognized Indonesian sovereignty over West Papua. They also rebuffed the Indonesian government's diplomatic efforts to deny the ULMWP entry in their 20th communique. MSG leaders referred to the ULMWP as an organization representing Malaysians living abroad, presumably reassured the Indonesian government that they respected the country's territorial integrity. At the same time, MSG leaders acknowledge the Western Papua as separate from Indonesia. The door has been pushed ajar to some kind of political negotiation and just want to be the central government in Jakarta that does all the talking. The ULMWP have a seat at the table. 5 governors of Indonesia will also have a voice. And some of them, like Anabi, have shown independent thinking and willingness to propose creative solutions. The Indonesian government was less than pleased. For years, Jakarta vigorously resisted calls for dialogue by Western Papuans or any suggestion that cause of conflict were political in nature. In the words of Engelbert Sarabat, the head of the Lapago Council of Customary Chiefs, the East says the Indonesian government is allergic to dialogue. Unquote. For years, Jakarta has wanted to avoid any suggestion that Jayapura, the capital west of Papua, was either equal to Jakarta, or that discussion of independence was on the table. But when Jakarta closed down the space for dialogue, they left West Papuans demanding political freedom with no domestic avenues for talking about what they wanted, freedom. So they took their concerns to the Pacific, to Melanesians with a shared identity who would not thus resonate with their cause. Internationalizing the West Papua issue is likely what Jakarta was trying to prevent. Suddenly, a Jakarta-West Papua dialogue, the Papua Peace Network founder Reverend Nales Tebe and others have been pushing for a better part of 10 years might look moderate. On the other hand, the elevation of the ULM-WP might cause hardliners within the Indonesian government to push harder, but there is no going back. For the time being, at least, the political dynamics have gotten more complex and unpredictable, full of possibility. Sagoravar was particularly explicit, telling the Island Sun that a forum where the two political groups can engage in dialogue has now been created. Whatever the case, the Indonesian government will have to respond. Relentless, unarmed resistance inside West Papua and unprecedented solidarity outside the country and West Papua's Malaysian neighbors has turned West Papua's long-running struggle for freedom into a cause celebre in the Pacific. The MSG has become West Papua's first international forum for dialogue. West Papua and Indonesia will sit across the table from each other. Vanuatu and FLNKS have confirmed their support. The Solomon Islands government has emerged as a stronger ally. Papua New Guinea and Fiji will have to deal with sustained and organized domestic discontent, and other Pacific Island countries are beginning to stir. On June 26th, the MSG finally brought West Papua back to the Malaysian family. Benny Wenda said, with the region firmly behind us, we will now take our message to the world. Halaku and Alamang has since returned to West Papua resolute in their commitment to non-violent resistance. They and other members of the ULMWP are now preparing for the Pacific Island Forum at the meetings of the 16 Pacific Island nations that will gather in Port Moresby in September. The ULMWP have already secured West Papua as one of the 5 priority agendas. Along with climate change, we have to finish this. Haluk told me, freedom will come. This article is an edited excerpt from the author's forthcoming book, Merodeka and the Morning Star, Civil Resistance in West Papua. And I have to say this, the people in West Papua make that decision. Secession, if you want secession and be a sovereign nation, do it. You have my support. And if it succeeds, even all the islands around it, including Indonesia, should have respect for them. Do negotiations on trades. Be allies. Honor one another. They are not the enemy. They just have differences. And tyranny isn't really good. This is a form of resistance that should enhance all of us. This is just another example. It's not just happening in that area, but all parts of Europe and Asia and North America as well. Let's talk about Texas being secede, but it's just a claim. Even there's areas in Alberta. They tried to secession in Quebec. Talk about Canada itself and British of Columbia. So if this happens, let them have their freedom. And be allies, not foes. And there's one thing great about it. technology is the advantage. And people, support them. Give them that honor. If they want to be a sovereign nation, so be it. My thoughts are with you folks out there in West Papua. Solidarity is healthy, including demoniac resistance. Keep it up. Use it with love, not hate. And that is it, my friends. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to listen. I know the last article was pretty long, but Jason McLeod did a fantastic job. If you have any information, comments, criticisms, love letters, hate letters, etc., or you want to throw some good information that I may want to check out, always use Decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, or send your comments to iHeartRadio. Or you can email me at LokiLuck3@gmail.com. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.